Welcome to the Sporty Sibling Podcast,
where we score touchdowns and make bets.
To Trier. Trier drives down and throws it down. Alonzo Trier.
Today they're gonna match off and talk about
Welcome back to the Sporty Sibling Podcast. Like yesterday, we did the men's final March Madness tournament. Today, we're going to do the women's ahead of their Sweet 16. Again, great tournament, just like the men's. Really enjoyed it. Very excited to continue this. And, I mean, there were some upsets there that I wasn't even thinking of. But let's go ahead and get started. And let's go ahead and head to the first one, or section. Whatever you call it. To start off the women's tournament, we're going to go to Greenville 1. Yes. And we're going to start with the defending champs, South Carolina versus Norfolk State. Now, Donna Stanley saw an opportunity to not only start this season strong, but more importantly, set a tone for the whole tournament with the defending champs. But what actually happened was poor shooting with the lack of attack, and that is worrying everybody. Even though they blew out Norfolk, the performance was less than wanting. Time to change the night and look at that. Next game, South Florida versus Marquette. An overtime win for South Florida was the way to start the tournament, okay? They showed everyone they are not backing off, and they're winning everything. I mean, the Lady Bulls rallied back a few times to make one heck of a game, okay? But thanks to Elena Tysensky, who finished with 13 points, they were able to come off with that overtime win and move on to the second round. Oklahoma versus Portland. I'm just going to keep it simple. Oklahoma came into as the nation's second highest scoring offense against Portland. I'm sorry. I'm going to say with Portland. Against Portland. And that's exactly what they showed. They showed why they're the second highest scoring offense, and they beat up on Portland. Plain and simple. Another one that got beat up, UCLA versus Sacramento State. UCLA controlled the ball, took the lead, and with as high as 24 points, I mean, they made a statement and said, we're moving forward. Creighton versus Mississippi State. I mean, when I say everyone was rolling, I mean it. Mississippi State's Jarkela Jordan scored 20 points while Jessica Carter used her stature to have not only 14 points but 10 rebounds, helping teammate Anastasia Hines at 12 points to move them on to the next round. Beautiful teamwork. Next, you have Notre Dame versus Southern Utah. Maddie Westbell scored 20 points while Sonia Citrus had 14 and a season-high 6 assists. This helped lead the Fighting Irish over Southern Utah. The Irish did have a very slow start, which may get a little bit worried when you're moving on deeper into the tournament. But no matter what the Thunderbirds did to stop or try to stop the Fighting Irish, they could not do it. They moved on. Next, you have Arizona versus West Virginia. The Wildcats ran into some issues early with Shayna Pendleton leaving the game with 4 fouls. But did that stop them? No. Freshman Kayla Gabor stepped up to help the Wildcats pull away with the win. Now, Kate Reese scored 25 points in the win, but the whole Wildcat team was shooting at a 72% rate. From the field in the first quarter alone. If that doesn't scream, I'm winning this game, I don't know what does. And lastly, you have Maryland versus Holy Cross. I'm just going to put this simple. Maryland won 93-61. They played as close to a perfect game as you can get it. And they beat up on Holy Cross. Plain and simple. Done. Moving on. Next one. Second section of the women's tournament with Greenville 2. We're going to start off with Indiana versus Tennessee Tech. The Hoosiers took care of business in the first round, but it wasn't a one-person show. Sydney Parrish scored 19 points and 8 rebounds. Then, when she was taken out of the game, her replacement, Lily Meister, added 7 points and 3 blocks. Even Grace Barge scored 17 points and 7 rebounds, with adding 4 assists and even 3 blocks. It was just all around a team effort by everybody, and oh my god, I'm itchy because they gave me the chills. See what I did there? Yeah. Next game, Oklahoma State versus Miami. Miami was down at half, ladies and gentlemen, and instead of giving up, they started discussing solutions. They were like, all right, what we can do, let's not freak out. And after that, I'm telling you, after the half, it was over. Okay? Haley Cavinder scored 12 of her 16 points in the second half to help Miami come back from a 17-point deficit. It also helped that Oklahoma State became dejected and gave up nearly 52% shooting in the first half. Okay? So it kind of like, all right, it's getting there. In the end, neither team will forget this game, and in all honesty, Oklahoma State should be proud of the way they played. Even as bad as they were shooting, they still gave Miami a heck of a scare. So in the end, it was a very close game, 62-61 Miami, but Miami did move on to the next round. Next, you have Washington State versus FGCU. That's a mouthful. So FGCU made one heck of an upset versus number 5 Washington State. Okay? It was an upset. This was helped by Shaw Carter scoring 24 points, followed by Tashara Morehouse scoring 16 points. They even had Maddie Antichuki scoring 11 points. I mean, she was only averaging 4.1 points per game till the tournament. And she was even able to do back-to-back threes to help keep the lead forward and eventually cause the opposite and win the game. Beautiful, right? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Next, Villanova versus Cleveland State. Okay, I'm going to keep it simple. Villanova dominated, but it was really thanks to Maddie Segret, who became the 5th woman in NCAA history to score 1,000 points in a season. She did that by scoring 35 in this game alone. So congratulations to Maddie Segret. Where's my... No, very well deserved. I completely just... Yeah, I love it. All right, next game. I don't even remember where. There you go. Michigan versus UNLV. Emily Kaiser has as more winning plays than Michigan great Aiden Hutchinson has sacks with 13, and Tom Curtis has interceptions with 25. Now, why do I say this? In football, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you get an interception as a defense or you get a sack, you get a sticker on your helmet. Okay? In college. Different symbols. For example, Ohio State's get that little flag, the Buckeye flag. Others have different things. Okay? But Emily Kaiser has more of those stickers than these two great Michigan greats have them. And if that does not tell you how amazing she is, maybe this will help. She had 18 points and 10 rebounds to help Maddie Nolan add another 18, and even Leah Brown helped score 17 more points. And that was alone by using her size to get to the basket. Also, to explain even more how many stickers she has, per their Michigan State head coach, she has over 40 stickers on her locker. Just saying. Future Hall of Famer right there. Next, we have LSU versus Hawaii. How did LSU was not able to just steamroll over Hawaii? I have no idea. They only had a 7.1% rate from the 3-point line while only shooting at 43.5% from the field goal line. I guess it helped that Angel Reese had 34 points and were able to score 72% from free throws. In the end, Hawaii did make a lot of mistakes with 21 turnovers, so they were able to capitalize on that. But this should have been a steamroll, and it wasn't as much of a steamroll as you expected. 73-50 to me is not a big steamroll in this situation. NC State versus Princeton, another good not really upset, but still. When Princeton recruited Grace Stone, they didn't know how many game-winning jumpers she was going to take for them. But I can guarantee you right now they are freaking glad they got her. With 22 points and a game-winning three-pointer in this game, she single-handedly helped move them on to this game. To their next round. I almost call it the Sweet 16. My bad. No. Yes, Princeton stayed close throughout the whole game, and they did everything to be able to continue moving forward. But at the end, when they took the lead, the important part was they continued dominating. They stopped the Wolfpack from scoring more points and took the win 64-63. And lastly, we have Utah versus Gardner-Webb. Alyssa Peely had 33 points, 3 rebounds, 8 assists. Jenna Johnson had 20 points and 5 assists. Them alone combined for 22 of the 31 shots taken by the Utes in this game alone. This is just a plain massacre. 103 versus 277. And I'm just not going to say any more because that's just sad. Let's move on to the next one. Next up, we have Seattle 4, starting off with Stanford versus Sacred Heart. Stanford prepared so well that even though missing their top player, they were able to pull off one of the biggest wins in the tournament so far behind Haley Jones' 17-point game and Telena Lepido's 7 assists. This was her debut. She had one heck of a game, and that's why they're moving on to the next round. Next, we have one of the good games that I thought was going to be a little bit closer than it actually was. But Ole Miss versus Gonzaga. The Lady Rebels took 100% advantage of the lack of three-pointers Gonzaga was shooting and used every rebound they got to stay ahead of the Bulldogs. And that's why they're moving on to the second round. Obviously, a very close game here with Louisville versus Drake. Before I go to Louisville, you got to give Drake credit. Katie Deneber confused the Louisville defense and was able to score 20 points and even was able to open it up for Anna Miller to score another 17. But what made this game even greater was the fact that Haley Van Lith from Louisville was done tired of seeing Drake score up and down them like they did and took over the game with 26 points. Mind you, 13 of which came in the final 5 minutes of the game. Okay? Thanks to those final 13 minutes, they were able to take home the win. All right? It was just one amazing game, and this ladies deserve all the credit in the world for just giving us the ability to watch such a great game. Next, you have Texas versus East Carolina. Again, I think Texas should have rolled over East Carolina, but it is what it is. And let me be more specific. They should have rolled them at least like 92-49, something like Stanford did to Sacred Heart. They were the much better team in general. But Texas did dominate the game overall, with especially considering East Carolina had 0 3-pointers, 17 turnovers, and was only shooting 17.9 from the field goal line. So, of course, how can Texas not win, like that? But again, I feel like Texas should have won, like LSU, with a lot more points, considering how bad the other team played. Next, you have Colorado versus MTSU. Frida Foreman scored 21 points, which helped Colorado open things up for Jalen Schroeder, who scored another 13, and Aronet Volin, who had 11 points. This allowed Colorado to hit a season-high 113 shots from the three-point arc. Even 7 players made at least one three-pointer during this game. That was a Colorado record. No wonder they won. Moving on. Georgia versus Florida State. Now, Georgia came into this game knowing that the zone defense was what they needed to do to stop Florida State. Okay? And in a sense, Florida State did get stopped. Okay? In the first half, the Seminoles were shooting with just 26.9% shooting. And it got even lowered in the second half with 22.9% shooting. Okay? So, in idea, Georgia should have won, right? Well, that's what happened. Duh. Y'all thought I was going to switch it up on y'all. Nope. That's exactly what happened. The zone defense did exactly what they needed to do. And it also helped that Diamond Battle scored 21 points with Audrey Warren shooting another 11 points. Perfect win for from Georgia. Although well at this, Florida almost did have a comeback. I think the zone defense kind of started breaking up towards the end, so it could have been a lot scarier again. Just saying. Last game we have Iowa versus Southeast Louisiana. Another dominant performance game, plain and simple. Iowa took advantage of the 45 rebounds and lack of three-pointers from Southeast Louisiana. No more needs to be said. Now, let's go on to the last section. Next, we have the final section in Seattle 3, starting off with Virginia Tech versus Chattanooga. Virginia used Georgia Amore and Elizabeth Kittle, who had 22 and 12 points respectively, to not only take control of the game, but pushed itself to the second round. Perfect win. I love this game. Virginia moved on. USC versus South Dakota State. This was a strange game because both teams basically played the same. No, with less than 36% from the field goal line, less than 25% from the three-point line, and each had 20 turnovers. What made the difference were the rebounds. The Jackrabbits took every chance they could to get the ball back and score. This is why they're moving forward and beat USC. Iowa State versus Toledo. Toledo used the athleticism of its players like Jada Jansen to score and control the game over Iowa State. Now, adding that Kenesha Lockett scored 24 points with 13 rebounds also helped. And because of that, Toledo, Jesus Christ, is moving forward. I kept trying to say Iowa. I don't know why. Tennessee versus St. Louis. Look, plain and simple, Tennessee controlled the game the whole time. It was lights out with Jordan Hurston, who had 21 points, and Rickea Jackson, who had 18. Nothing more you can say. North Carolina versus St. Joan. Again, the Tar Heels faced defeat as almost certain with 6 minutes left in the game. But thanks to Deja Kelly, who led the team with 18 points and was 7 of 16 in the shooting, they were able to put off the win. Okay, it did also help that they were able to increase their shooting to a 42.1% from the field line. No, and that kind of helped them stay ahead of St. John's, but it was still too close of a matchup in my end. This shouldn't have been this close. Next, you have Ohio State versus James Madison. Ohio State dominated the game even with the lack of threes, but was able to take advantage of the 20 James Madison turnovers to take home their first win of the tournament. Again, the balance of lack of threes to turnovers is what helped them win. I firmly believe that if James Madison had not caused those 20 turnovers, I think they would have seen a completely different tournament here. I think so. Next, we have Baylor versus Alabama. Jamie Asbury scored 26 points, which included the three key field goal shots to take the win over the Crimson Tide. But it was not just her to help win this game. The whole Baylor team held the Tide without a field goal for most of the fourth quarter, which again, that allowed them to control the game and take home the win and move on to the next round. And the last game we have for this first round, we have UConn versus Vermont. UConn dominated the game with 43 rebounds. Plain and simple, they moved on. Let's go look at the second round. So that was round 1, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to round numero dos. And starting off again with the Greenville section of everything, of the tournament. I don't know why I keep saying everything. That was weird. But starting off with South Carolina versus South Florida. Now, South Carolina had a bad first game. Like I said, bad everything. And even though they won, the second game came much better behind Elijah Boston scoring her 81st double-double, and Saya Cook scored an additional 21 points. Now, South Florida should get credit. They did start very strong, And we're not scared against the defending champs. But even then, the defending champs dominated and move on to the next round. Oklahoma versus UCLA. UCLA proved that even when things fall apart, they can come back and still pull off a win. Okay, after blowing an 18-point lead in the second half, Chrisma Osborne took it upon herself to bring the win for UCLA. Osborne scored a career-high 36 points, which included 13 in the final 10 minutes of the game. Now, the Sooners did came back twice from an 18 and 13-point deficit with the help of Maddie Williams scoring 24 points and Anna Lanusa scoring 15. They helped make a 22-3 run to make the Bruins sweat. But in the end, the Bruins controlled most of the game, and it was just not enough for the comeback for the Sooners. UCLA moves on to this Sweet 16. Next, we have Mississippi State versus Notre Dame. With the help of Lauren Ebel, who had 10 points, 18 rebounds, 4 blocks, and Maddie Westbom who added 9 points and 15 rebounds, the Irish were able to survive Mississippi State to make it to the Sweet 16. But let us not forget how well Mississippi State was able to stop Notre Dame's Sonia Citron, who only had 14 points in the game. But because everybody was able to step up, they were the ones that were able to win. Next, Arizona versus Maryland. With the help of Faith Masonia and Diamond Miller, the Terrapins were able to pull off a huge win against the Wildcats. The Wildcats did give them one heck of a battle and even had the lead for a bit. But in the end, they could not keep the offense going or make the defense stick to stop the Terrapins. That is why Maryland is moving forward. Moving on to the next section. Greenville 2, round numero 2. Indiana versus Miami. Thanks to Destiny Harden and her game-winning shot, the Miami Hurricanes were able to outlast the Hoosiers to move on to the Sweet 16. Harden finished with 18 points, while Lola Pendade added 19 points and 7 rebounds. And although the Hurricanes were never once trailing Indiana, we need to remember that the Indiana Hoosiers, with Mackenzie Holmes, who had 22 points and 9 rebounds, did do enough to make the Hurricanes sweat. But again, in the end, Miami dominated too much, and they took home the win to move on to the Sweet 16. Next, Villanova versus FGCU. Look, this was a massacre in the second round. Villanova dominated thanks to Maddie Green, who had 31 points, and Lucy Olsen, who had 23 points. Plain and simple, Villanova won that one. Michigan versus LSU. Now, this is the LSU that I thought I would see in the first round, and I didn't. But Angel Reese, also known as the Bayou Barbie, did not look like that when they won this game. At the end of this game in that win. But she didn't give a care because she was like, I'm still going to look beautiful. Okay? Because we got that win. So, the reason why she was so happy outside of the W is because she alone helped the LSU Tigers move on with 25 points, 24 rebounds, 6 blocks, 4 assists, 3 steals. She was just unstoppable in every aspect of the game. That's why they're moving on. Utah versus Princeton. Alisa Pili, who was the start of the game and was even unstoppable in this game, with 28 points and 10 rebounds, was able to show why Utes are a 2 seed. Okay? Because even though Princeton never let up on Pili, they were always on her 24/7, she was still unstoppable. I mean, for God's sake, she had 28 points and 10 rebounds. Thanks to Pili, the Utes are moving on to the Sweet 16. LSU better be worried. Just throwing that out there. But let's go ahead and move on to Seattle 4. Seattle 4, round number 2. We had Stanford versus Ole Miss to start them off. Again, I had Stanford winning this round and losing to South Carolina in the Sweet 16. Obviously, that didn't happen because the Lady Rebels came into this game looking up at the giant that Stanford is, and they weren't scared at all. And that really showed. The Lady Rebels had 3 players with multiple points. So offensively, they were like, we got this. We ain't scared of y'all. Defensively, though, Cameron Brink from Stanford lit them up for 20 points. But even with that kind of performance, it was still not enough. Not enough. And Stanford broke my heart and is going home. But the Lady Rebels are moving on. Congratulations. Next, you had Louisville versus Texas. Louisville started the game with a toe-to-toe fight versus Texas. And I mean, it was toe-to-toe. No. But this is just the first quarter, ladies and gentlemen. At that point, we knew this was going to be a great game. I honestly thought it. But again, Van Lith, said no to this. We're not going to make this a close game like we just had. They want to be dominant, and that is what she did. She put the team on her back once again and had 21 points and a lead, and took the lead as high as 27 points versus Texas. The Cardinals confidently stopped and ran over the Longhorns after the first quarter to move on to the Sweet 16. This girl, I am telling you, she is going to be a Hall of Famer someday. Whichever WNBA team gets her, they got a monster on their hands. And God forbid anyone that pisses her off like they have so far. Next, you have Colorado versus Duke. With the help of Quay Miller, who had 17 points and 14 rebounds, and Aronette Vonell converting rebounds into more points, they were able to overcome Duke in overtime and move on to the Sweet 16. Now, Colorado did held Duke without a field goal for most of the end of the game, which was the dart that kind of really ruined Duke. Overall, Colorado dominated this game, and although did lose the lead a handful of times, they did not allow themselves to be scared by that and continue moving forward. Even only allowed 3 points in overtime to Duke to again win the game. Lastly, you have Iowa versus Georgia. Even with Caitlin Clark having a bad game, which we consider this a bad game, the Iowa Hawkeyes are still able to pull off a win and move on to the Sweet 16. Even though Georgia did all they could to contain Clark, they forgot that there were other players ready to step up and take her place. Players like Monica Sinano with 20 points, Gabby Marshall with 15, and McKenna Warnock with 14, just to name a few. There were still a few others. And even though Georgia did make a small comeback and made the game close, the Hawkeyes saw this and did change from offense to defense and held them to 0 points, and even were able to cost 3 turnovers to take home the win, and now they're in the Sweet 16. Now let's go to Seattle 3. Seattle 3, round number 2. We're starting off with Virginia Tech versus South Dakota State. I'm just going to keep this simple. Virginia Tech took over the game early and shot from all over the place perfectly. That is why they're moving on to the Sweet 16. Honestly, I'm surprised South Dakota State even got 60 points in there. That was a pretty simple game. Tennessee versus Toledo. Like in Virginia Tech's game, Tennessee shot from all over the place and ran over Toledo. I will say that Tennessee had issues with turnovers in the first game, which they had 18 turnovers. And again, it happened again. No, they were lucky that the offense was strong enough and overpowering enough that Toledo couldn't handle it. But I do not see their luck helping them get past the round of the Sweet 16. Simply put, you can't have more than 10 turnovers and expect to continue winning like this. I think they've been getting very lucky, and their luck might run out versus Virginia Tech. Next we have North Carolina versus Ohio State. The Buckeyes should give so much love to Jack Sheldon, because without her and her last-minute jumper to end the tie and take the win, they would be going to overtime or could possibly be going home. in overtime or in regular season, depending on how they did. This was overall a great game with team players and playing powerful and strong into the paint. I loved this game. But the Buckeyes did do great and stayed offensively minded in the overall matchup. Okay, even after losing a 12-point lead to UNC, the offense stayed focused and played formidable to make the comeback. What really mattered here was the smarts of Sheldon to control the play at the end of the game. Even though it did fall apart and it was not what they wanted, she controlled it, stayed tough, made the score to win it and move on to the Sweet 16. Lastly, of the second round, we have Baylor versus UConn. UConn beat up on Baylor so bad that Ashley Food had 22 points after missing 22 games due to injury. But that was not all. Elijah Edwards added 19. Aubrey Griffin had 12 with 12 rebounds from Andrew Griffin, while Mika Moll had 10 assists. UConn was just too much offensively and defensive for the Baylor Bears to even think about having a comeback, and that's why UConn is moving to the Sweet 16. And speaking of the Sweet 16, that's what we're going to talk about next. So let's go. Now we are in the Sweet 16, ladies and gentlemen, and because of that, we got to talk about the first game here. UCLA Bruins versus the South Carolina Gamecocks. Defending champs are 34-0, trying to make it 35-0 here on Saturday. There's just a lot to look at. One of the main team stats for South Carolina that we have to look at is that South Carolina put up 81 points versus UCLA the last time they played. Okay, while UCLA is giving up 61.8 points per context. Now, when the Gamecocks are shooting at 62 or more points, they are basically undefeated with 33.0 points. Okay, there was that one, and the Gamecocks are averaging 16.7 assists and 12.6 turnovers per game, which is very important to look at and could potentially get them win. All right. With that being said, though, UCLA has also some important stats. Okay, UCLA enters the matchup with a 68.2 points per game this season currently. Okay, with that, even though that's 17 points more than South Carolina has given up this season, the Bruins are still 27-9 when they scored at least 51 points. Another very important stat. Okay, as long as the Bruins can keep a tight game, I firmly believe they can do it. Now, I would say that Emily Broiser and Gina Conti need to have a heck of a game. Minimum, 6 rebounds from Broiser and at least 6 assists from Gina. Okay, if they can both average at least, I'm gonna just say 8 points in this game, I think they can pull off the upset. But they're gonna have to deal with the likes of Raven Jones, who's right now averaging 3.5 assists and 3.9 points per game, and Elijah Boston, who again leads a game caught with 9.7 rebounds per game, adding on to the 13.1 points per game that she is currently expressing. So, it's going to be interesting. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, you do have to pick a winner, and I'm still going to pick on a very close matchup, South Carolina Gamecocks, to continue their undefeated streak and move on to the Final Four. Or, not Final Four, I'm sorry. Final Four. Yeah. Whatever. Okay, you get what I mean. South Carolina wins this one. Next, we have Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, against the Maryland Tar-Pits. And, Maryland heads into this matchup with an average of 79.4 points per game. Okay? That's almost 20 more points than Notre Dame is surrendering currently during this year. Okay? Now, when the Terrapins are scoring 58 points, they are 27-5. Okay? As long as the Terrapins make at least a 70% from the free throw line, that will be their biggest edge to be able to beat the Irish. Okay? Now, do not take this lightly because it is hard to do something like that. But if anyone can do it, it's the Terrapins. Now, with that being said, Notre Dame is coming in with 74.2 points per game averaging. Okay? While Maryland is only giving up 60 points per game. Okay? That's where it's going to be a big difference here. But like the Terrapins, the Fighting Irish have to hit a 70% from the free throw line to be able to be able to give them the win over the Terrapins. But I think either way, this is going to be a very much close matchup. Okay, they're going to need a huge game from the Fighting Irish are going to need a huge game from Olivia Miles, who has made 3.3 free throws per game currently during the last couple of games. Okay, they're also going to need their Mayer help to step up to be able to make the 3 points that she's been doing so far. She's averaging 1.8 3-pointers per game. That's basically she's shooting 30% from downtown right now, which is what you want. Don't get it twisted though. Maryland does have some strong people on their side. Ivy Mayer also contributes with 14.4 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, and 1.8 steals. Okay, if she can have that same performance or that average again, Irish better watch out, especially when it comes to that 5.2 rebounds. Okay, that's what's gonna get them the ball back and score, or give them a second chance to score more points. Cheyenne Seller, who averaged 13.8 points per game, is gonna have to have another huge game, considering that she is averaging, like Myers, 3.7 assists per game. Okay, this reason why I say this is because if they can assist, especially with the rebounds that they're having, they can go ahead and get a bigger score and take a lead very, very much early. Either ways, though, guys, I do have to pick a winner. I am gonna go ahead and take the Maryland Tar Pits in another close one. I think the rebounds, the 5.2 rebounds per game from Mayers and the 3.7 assists from Seller will be too much. And I haven't even touched on Brianna Alexander's 1.9 3-pointers per game. I mean, she's knocked down 44% of her shots so far from the 3-point line. Yeah, I'm giving it at least by 10 Maryland. Next, we have Ole Miss versus Louisville. Now, Louisville is coming in hot. I mean, I've talked about this team a lot the past 2 times, and I really like it. And this girl, Vin Lee, leads Louisville, knocking down 4.2 free throws per game, and she's shooting at 88%. We've seen what she's done. She's their playmaker. She's who they need to have play hot at this current moment in time to be able to win this game. If she stays hot, Louisville will take this one. But Louisville needs to be careful. The Lady Rebels are shooting at a 41.8% from the field. Okay? While defensively, they are stopping their opponents and limiting them to a 35.2% average. Okay? As long as that happens, I don't know how this is going to end up in matchup, because you're looking at a very much both defensive and offensively matchup teams. Okay? Like I said, Van Lith is going to need to have one heck of a game to be able to win this one, because she is averaging over 20 points per game so far. She's also going to have Olivia Kronich step up, okay, and continue her strong lead with 6.3 rebounds per game, okay, while, I'm sorry if I say this wrong, Mikasa Robinson, who had 4.2 assists per game, is going to have to step up and get behind Kochar to be able to open up those rebounds and get a second chance, or steal the ball and get down the field, okay? Now, I do want to say that there's one outside of Van Lith, their secret weapon will be Chris Scar, who's their best 3-pointer, okay? But I'm not going to put all my hopes on her because she's only shooting about 42% average. I kind of want that to be a 45 that just gives me more comfort. Okay, Ole Miss, on the other hand, does have some weapons, though. Maya Taylor, is their top passer currently with 3.8 assists and averaging 5.8 points per game. Okay, and the rebound side, Madison Scott is averaging 8.9 points, 8.9 rebounds per game, which are leading up to 11.8 points per game. That's going to be their secret weapon here. If Maya Taylor and Madison Scott can work together to get those assists, get those rebounds, Louisville better be careful. But we do have to pick a winner here, guys. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to the SEC. I got to go with Louisville. Van Lith is just... Haley Van Lith is my women crush Wednesday, okay? Or Thursday or whatever. I mean, I'm basically telling her she just blew my mind. And I'm just... This woman is everything, like I said. Whoever drafts her in the WNBA is going to get a monster, and 100% I'm getting her jersey when she goes into the NBA. Plain and simple. It's been said here. Record me. I will do it. Bam. So again, Louisville takes this one on a close one by 5. Next one, we have Colorado versus Iowa. Now, I don't know this one. I'm actually very 50-50 on this one because Colorado and Iowa are pretty much close, okay? No, both have a pretty good rebounding teams. No, and again, they're shooting pretty much averagely. They're shooting about 20 points per game. I mean, it's really the only difference is about a 10-point difference, okay? So, to me, I really don't know where to go from here. Buffalo's averaging 69 points per game, while Iowa's averaging 87.4 points per game. But to me, Colorado is a much better rebounding team, and a better field goal making team than Iowa. So I'm honestly not really sure where to go with that or how to be able to do it. Plus, her name, I wrote down her name, Catelyn Clark, who had 22 points for Iowa, is actually a really, really good player. So I actually don't know where to go from here. And I mean, even then, Quay Miller's 17 points effort, win the other night against Duke was even great, just like Clark's 22-point performance. So I think in the end, I'm going to go ahead and pick Iowa simply because I feel that their offense is much stronger than Colorado's defense. I'm picking Iowa by 10. Yeah, plain and simple. Next, we have Miami versus the Miami Hurricanes versus the Villanova Wildcats. Let me look at just plain and simple. Villanova is averaging 71 points per game. While the Hurricanes are averaging 70.5 points per game. Okay? So offensively, this is already a close matchup. Okay? Here's the kicker. And I think this is the big kicker. Miami has allowed 58.4 points than other teams. Okay? Now, I'm sorry. 63.9 points. Read the wrong stat. 63.9 points. Okay? So, that's going to be the catch here. Okay? If Villanova can get their leading scorer and rebounder in Maddie Segrist, can never say her name, but still. But if they can get her going and get her hot, she can average 29.2 points per game to include 9.1 rebounds in the game. So as long as she's hot, that will open the game for Lucy Olsen and Maddie Burke, who have been very, very good the last few games, considering that Burke is averaging 1.9 tries per contest from the three-point line. As long as that continues, I think we can see Villanova pulling this off. Again, though, be very careful, though. The Miami Hurricanes do have Haley Cavender, who leads Miami in scoring and averaging 12.6 points per game. Okay? Though, Jalea Williams is also very good here with 2.7 assists per game. So I firmly believe it's going to be a very much give and take game. Very close matchup. I will still give it to Villanova by 10 to take home, to move on to the Final Four. LSU Tigers versus the Utah Utes. And this is interesting. This is going to be an interesting matchup. You know, Utah is 27-4 in games where they put up more than 57 points. And so far, we've seen them put up those more than 57 points. All right? Very much simple. Okay? Here's the kicker, though. LSU is giving up and allowing how much? You guessed it, 57 points per game. So how does this work? Right? How will this work? Here's the kicker, though. The Lady Tigers are scoring 83 points per game. And the Utes are allowing 60 points per game. Here's the kicker, though, ladies and gentlemen. When LSU makes 66 points per game, they are 29-1 this year. I know, right? Right? This is going to be a shootout. I firmly believe it. I am going to say, though, this. I am a bigger fan of the Utes than LSU simply because they're averaging better in points and rebounds per game thanks to Gianna Kneps and Jenna Johnson. Of course, Gianna is their biggest threat because of her three-point performance that she can do. All right, don't get me wrong. Don't get it wrong. Don't twist it. Okay, Alex Morris out of LSU and Fujian Johnson both can make points and make the rebounds. I think at the end of the day, though, because of the average mark is lower for the Utes to win, they only need to score 57 points to be able to continue their streak and be more considered to win. I'm going to give it to the Utes by 10 to move on. Next, we have Tennessee versus Virginia Tech. Again, this is another weird game, but let me be serious here. The first game, Tennessee had 18 turnovers. The second game, they had 11. That is almost 30 turnovers in 2 games. Okay? It's 29, but whatever, round up, easy numbers. Okay? That alone is ridiculous. Okay? Ridiculous. Now, here's another thing. Virginia Tech's leading scorer, Elizabeth Kidley, is averaging 18 points and 8 rebounds per game. Okay? They're also averaging 5.1 assists with Amore. Forget her name. Georgia Amore. And 5.7 rebounds per game with Taylor Soule. Now, why am I saying this? If the Virginia Tech Hokies can cause the turnovers in Tennessee, it doesn't matter how many times Jordan Hershey can put points on the board, or they have Ricky Jackson lead the game, or Tess Darby, shooting from the 3-point line. This is going to be the difference, okay? If Virginia Tech can cause 10 plus turnovers, Virginia Tech will get this. If Tennessee can hold them back and control the turnovers, I think it's going to be a much closer matchup with a very high likely chance for Tennessee to win. But at the end of the day, I like the Virginia Tech Hokies a lot more. Give me Virginia Tech by 10 to move on. Ohio State versus UConn. Again, another close matchup. And I honestly, looking at this one, I'm like, here we go. Who's gonna do better? No, the Huskies are truly outshooting their opponents with a 49.5 percentage from the field goal. While their opponents are only shooting 34.7 averagely. Okay, that's a huge margin of difference. Okay, but Ohio State is averaging 80.4 points per game to 58 points of UConn that they have allowed. So see the big difference. Okay, now that's gonna be where the matchup is. Again, this is gonna be another very much offensively minded game, and defensively they're gonna have to really figure out where they're going. Here's the kicker: Ohio State's Ricky Harris is their top passer, notching 3.4 assists per game, which have turned into a minimum of 6 points per game. Okay, and as long as their top rebounder Taylor Theory can pull down those shots, you can look at Ohio State's defense, being the kicker to keep it close against UConn. Now, Ohio State doesn't just have to think about that. Ohio State needs to think about UConn's Elijah Edwards, who leads the team with 17 points and 9 rebounds. Now, they also, not only do they have to dominate her, they have to also look at Dorka Johans, who leads the Huskies with 9.9 rebounds per game and 14 points. Okay, while Nika Homo is on pace to have 8 assists per game. Okay, so they're gonna have to figure out how to shut these 3 ladies down and still be able to have Ricky Harris and Taylor Theory to move up, get the assists, get the passes, get the rebounds, and score the game. Ohio's also gonna have to figure out how to get Taylor Mikesel to the 3-point line. She's their top 3-pointer, averaging 3.2 shots per game. That's amazing so far, in my opinion. But if they cannot do that, okay? If they cannot do that, I don't see Ohio State winning this. I still gonna pick UConn in a very high margin by 15 points to move on to the next round. And as you guys saw, that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for you guys listening. Again, I hope you guys like this 2-show process that we're doing. I'm enjoying doing it. It's keeping me even more busy than I already am. And we just hope we can bring you even more content, and you guys are loving it. As always, guys, follow the RYM social media page and YouTube page, and of course the Sports Receiving Podcast in all of our social medias. Go on to the RYM page to go ahead and get all our merch and everything else in between. As always, guys, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.